I've done like 5 shows this week where they've asked me about Bama, Tennessee, and they've called it a playoff elimination game. I have no idea in what world this is a playoff elimination game. As far as I can tell, the loser incurs their second loss. I mean, I've got a half decent reason to believe we'll see a 3-loss SEC team in the playoffs. So it's not that for me. But outside of that, if Bama goes in there and wins, then, well, it's a Tennessee loss at home, and they've been shut out in the first half of their last 2 games before this. So I would imagine, unless it's a 42-35 loss, you've got more chronic questions about the offense. And then on the other side, man, if Kalen DeBoer goes 0 for the state of Tennessee, and they've looked nothing like themselves basically from the first half of the Georgia game on. You had the second half of the Georgia game, you had the Vandy game, you had the South Carolina freakout fest last week. If they go up there and they can't get the job done, everything's still in play for both of them. But yeah, I don't think that'll change how your call-ins sound on Monday morning, if that makes any sense.
Well, one thing we can be assured of is that both teams will have a large portion of their fan bases pissed off on Sunday, because that's just been that way since the NC State game for Tennessee and pretty much all year for Alabama. So ones that aren't necessarily appreciating the wins that are happening this year, I don't think they're going to appreciate this one because it's a rivalry game. I think a lot of it would depend on the loser of this game, how it went. If it's Alabama getting torched through the air and they find a way to win, you're going to get a lot of complaining. It's just going to happen. If it's Alabama losing in some sort of a shootout and you felt like the ground game could have been there, there'll be some complaining about that. Tennessee, if Dylan Sampson goes for 396 yards and they win this game, there will be statements such as Josh Heupel can no longer call plays. Defenses have this offense figured out. And what are we going to do? Because obviously the blueprint has now been laid and we can't call plays anymore. So either way, it's going to happen. I think it comes down to the two other sides of the ball. I think Alabama's offense, can you find some balance? Can you run the ball and keep it away from that Tennessee offense just a little bit? Because if they do get to your secondary, you don't want them to get many opportunities to. And then on the flip side of that, Tennessee's defense still probably not getting enough credit. I know Keenan Peely's out. That's a big blow. Yeah. But that defensive line against Alabama's offensive line, that's what I want to watch. Like, that's must-see TV. That's a heavyweight title fight. Like, give me more of that. And can they get Dylan Sampson going? I don't know when Tennessee has the football. Alabama's D-line is getting a little bit better. Like, I thought Latham had maybe his best game in an Alabama uniform last week. We've seen Quindarius Robinson off the edge be a little bit better. So it feels like it's going to be a wide receiver DB game, when in actuality, I think this comes down to being a line of scrimmage game.
You know, the thing that this probably hinges on to me is, number one, explosive plays, which you could say about a lot of games. But the other thing that's a total wild card, I have no idea what kind of model can forecast this. It's kind of like turnovers. I mean, Bama's sitting there 119th in the country in penalty rate, and they've been some bad penalties, and they really haven't been put in a pressure cooker environment on the road yet. Wisconsin was out of it early. Vandy, you had more Bama fans there than Vandy. You lost the game, but it wasn't because of the environment. Actually, I don't even think Nick Saban was wrong in what he said about playing at Vanderbilt. So now I'm taking a very penalized team and I'm putting them in that environment. But Tennessee's not much better. They're 88th in the country there. So if I look at that as a wash, because I have no idea how to forecast it otherwise, if it just comes down to explosive play rate, I probably trust Milroe in Alabama a little bit more. But I feel like probably you did the best job, actually, of anyone I saw this past week, of explaining Tennessee's offense, difference between scheme being a problem versus just execution being a problem, which to me makes them feel like this rubber band that's pulled back, and you just, like, for whatever reason, you can't let go of it. But whenever you finally figure out a way to let go of it, that's Tennessee goes from being shut out in the first half to, oh, they got 23 on the board against Alabama at halftime. That kind of stuff would not shock me here.
Well, here's the thing with Tennessee's offense, and this is what I loved what they did in the offseason when Joey Halsey and Josh Heupel told us that they spent really the entire offseason on physicality, more tight ends, more downhill runs. They wanted to be able to win different style fights. And yeah, after the NC State game, I think we all looked at it and said, holy mother, like they are going to be that kind of team. Now we kind of realize NC State might be a little bit different than we thought, but they're still really good at it. And if they can get the offensive line going again, at least certain portions of it, I think the middle for the most part has, and right tackle have. But with the tight ends assistance, that can be something that they lean on while the passing game gets figured out. And if you missed the super technical breakdown that Josh is referencing on Monday's Read and React, it essentially was showing you incomplete passes down the field that were wide open, passes that were caught out of bounds, fumbled plays in the running back quarterback mesh, and throwing into triple coverage. Those are things that can be eliminated and be repaired.
Scheme.
Play calling is another thing that you forgot there as well. So yeah, all of those people that said that it just can't be done and defenses have it figured out. When I see a receiver, and that's why I love kind of looking at Twitter at games that happen while I'm working, because I don't get to see them. And then I'm going to go watch it the next day. And I think we've talked about this since week one. What I was seeing in that game was Josh can't call plays. Defenses have us figured out. Nico's not any good. I was like, wow, this is going to be bad. Wide open receiver, 50 yards downfield, overthrown. Wide open receiver downfield, ball not thrown enough for him to run under it. Wide open out route receiver catches it just barely out of bounds. Great catch. Fumbled mesh play on the zone read, other team recovers. Interception thrown into triple coverage. And I'm thinking, this doesn't feel like scheme or play calling to me. It just feels like mistakes that can be corrected. So also this new secondary for Alabama, we know the pattern matching stuff had some issues with it. They can be better suited with it, with what they're doing now. We don't know. We haven't seen it that much. So there's a ton of intrigue as to how this game's going to go. Because I don't think there's been a couple games this year, Josh, I've thought Alabama could just go push people around. I don't think Amari Thomas, Omar Norman Lott, and those guys, I don't think Bama's just pushing them. I'm not saying that they get pushed either, but that's kind of a stalemate. So you take that and scrap it and say, all right, now what? Do you add a blocker and run your quarterback more with no Keenan Peely? I feel like that could be an advantage. So a lot of different directions. I think this one, in those explosive plays, we know the Tennessee receivers still have them. We know Ryan Williams can make them. We know Jeremy Bernard can make them. So Jalen Milroe can make them. It may come down to that.
Hey man, I saw one Bama fan say something earlier this week, which is a wild thing to think about, but he may not be wrong. Could it be that getting a wide receiver back, could it be that getting Law back is as integral to their run blocking as the 5 they have on the field? Now, I know that you don't like hearing that, but Law is a devastating blocker when he's in.
I appreciate the sentiment because he's been on the block party like 3 times this year and he hadn't even played in the last couple games. He and Cedric Alexander running back at Vanderbilt, like they're invited always because they will blow you up at positions that we normally don't talk about. The problem is, I haven't seen a failure in the Alabama run game because of what's happening on the perimeter. So honestly, the only failure in the Alabama run game is the lack of commitment to it.
Okay.
That's why we pointed out in the Vanderbilt game. I looked over to our stats guy and I said, during the commercial, and I said, can you please tell me how many times Alabama has run the ball in consecutive plays? This is late third, early fourth. After our next break, he looks over and he goes, 3. By the way, 2 of those were touchdowns on the second run. They ended up being 4 for the game. And there's just this, maybe it's just me, but run game goes for 4 or 6, or even if it goes for 1 and there's good push, which is what I would see, it's 4 or 5 wide and we, spit it out, go and throw again, which you have good receivers and a great quarterback. So I understand it to an extent, but when you can live there, I just think it changes everything across the course of a game. And they haven't decided to move in that house just yet.